All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the 11 o'clock hour. I'm your host, Sierra Claire. With me today, we have another expert guest joining us to cover the Iran issue. We've covered this from multiple angles, giving you guys lots of information that is not found out there in the mainstream media. And we are going to be continuing that with Pastor Reza Safa. He is a pastor of 25 years and founder of Neja TV. And he's joining us today. He is originally from Iran and has now been living in the United States for several years. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's a joy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to get started because you wrote something that was very interesting and you called it concession with Iran. And so we heard President Trump this weekend on Air Force One. He said, we're going to finish the job. And you talked about that. What does finishing the job in Iran mean to you?
I think, after 47 years of a repressive regime that has spread terrorism throughout the Middle East and around the world, I think a finished job to me would be topple this government and let a democratic, free Iranian decide over their own future and really release the Middle East from the hands of these brutal IRGC and the Islamic clerics that have oppressed the people for so long. They will become a nuclear power and they will rebuild. They have the money to do it. The oil money, they have some of the greatest reserves in the world. They're number one in natural gas reserves in the world.
Wow.
They have money. They will rebuild all of these tunnels deeper in the ground that no bomber can stop them. They will build hundreds of thousands of those missiles that they have, and they will come back. And I don't think we will have another president as a stronger resolve as our President Trump to be able to withstand them. And then we will pay a tremendous price if we do not take care of the business right now and finish this task that is set before us.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very important point. We definitely do not want them to rebuild. And as you said, they've shown time and time again that they just keep kind of going back to that.
Like I said, Islam is dead in the hearts of millions of people in Iran. Even within the government, there are people that hungry for the power, but not the ideology of it. Give you an example. The family of the son that was bombed, their son-in-law was sleeping with another woman.
Oh, wow.
This is the son-in-law of the of the highest cleric Ayatollah in Iran.
Wow.
So these people are not believers in the Islamic faith. Although you have so many other groups like Hezbollah, like other groups within the Yemenis groups that are strongly pro this regime in Iran, and they will do anything because they are true believers. They would die for the sake of Islam.
Okay.
And during the Biden administration, God knows how many of them were let into the country and how many of them are here that are willing to be killed and kill others, just like we saw this last week.
Yeah.
For the sake of Islam. And that.
Now, describe the idea of the global Islamic caliphate. And you talked about, your father was a scholar and you've studied Islamic literature. So, what does the Islamic literature say about this? And is it something that we should be at all concerned about?
Within Islam, the jurists of Islamic faith have divided the world into three sections. One is called the House of Islam, which means that where the Sharia law is in operation, countries like Saudi Arabia, countries like Afghanistan, where Islam is the rule of the land.
Okay.
Then you have the other house, the House of Harb, which means the people that are outside of that is European people, or any country that is not ruled by the Islamic faith or Islamic Sharia law. And then you have the House of Ahd, or the House of Soul, which is a treaty between the Islamic house and the non-Islamic houses. And so the idea is that the world should be dominated by the Islamic faith. That's the call of Islam. The call of Islam is that at the end of the time, Islam will become the dominating faith and political system on the planet Earth. You have to understand that Islam is more than a religion. Many people confuse this. Islam, first of all, is a political system that is covered under religious ideology. And that religious ideology penetrates the people's soul, because policies and politics is usually outside. I might be a Democrat today, tomorrow I change to become a Republican based on what the party is doing. And so, but ideology of the heart doesn't change unless the gospel penetrates it. That's another story. And so Islam is a political system, and uses religion with force and fear to penetrate into people's souls. And it promises them, for instance, for these suicide bombers, promises them eternal life, because within Islam, within the religion, there is no assurance for salvation.
Oh, okay.
And Muhammad even didn't have assurance for salvation, much less any other Muslim. So, but if they are a martyr, if they die for the cause of Islam, then they have assurance. I think the Islamic faith has died in Iran. After 47 years, the Iranian population tasting the reality of Sharia law. Islam is so oppressive. Islamic Sharia law is so oppressive that today, 22nd century people cannot stand it. And that's what has happened in Iran. You know, out of 75,000 mosques in Iran, 50,000 mosques have closed down their doors.
Wow.
Because nobody attended. People in Iran are burning their Qurans. They're throwing them in the rivers. They're throwing them in trash cans. People are coming out in open, on social media sites, declaring they're not Muslims anymore.
Wow.
That they are Persian. They say usually, I'm a Persian, I'm not a Muslim. Denying the Islamic faith because they've tasted the poison of this awful, demonic, oppressive system. So I think the countries that we need to really be careful and watch for is Pakistan is one. I think Pakistan and Qatar is another one, and that we need to be watchful for. These radical groups that exist within these countries are very serious group of people that will do anything, and Taliban as well, because their belief is absolutely, they have no other options to them. They live in a dark room, and they believe in whatever they're commanded to believe in, and death and destruction is in their sight. So again, we have to be careful. But Iran is the key. Iran has been the basis for all these radical groups, even the Sunni groups that are anti-Iran. It gave them strength once the revolution took place in that country. So once Iran is out and defeated, I think that will discourage a lot of these groups throughout the Middle East. And of course, their support will be gone. No more oil money for groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and so on. So, yeah. So Iran is the key. We got to take care of business there. Our president needs to finish this task, and we need to have a new regime in that country.
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly what you were talking about. And we had another guest on who brought this up as well, but this is not only the threat, taking care of the threat from Iran, but it's also going to take care of a lot of other threats at the same time, as you said, through, taking away their funding, as well as, just discouraging a lot of these other groups who might be at this point feeling empowered to rise up, and without Iran in power, that's going to change all of that. So very important. This is very important for many reasons.
Just leaving North Korea and CBS. Yes, tonight is an international event. If I can be serious for just a moment, Everyone watching right now around the world is all too aware that these are very chaotic, frightening times.
Вот уже 4 года мы смотрим на звездное небо и загадываем самое важное желание.
4 years, we look at the sky for shooting stars to make a very important wish.
А, Но есть страны, где с неба падают не звезды, а ракеты и дроны.
But there are countries where instead of shooting stars, they have shooting bombs and shooting drones.
Во имя нашего будущего, во имя детей, остановите все войны сейчас.
In the name of our future, in the name of all of our children, stop all of these wars now.
Well, the Oscars have always been more than just a celebration of cinema. At times, they've also become a stage for very powerful social political messages. Over the decades, remember, several moments have been Hollywood's biggest night intersect with global debates as well as causes. It, in fact, started way back in 1973. We're going to start, there you have it, the image there, 1973 Oscars, where Marlon Brando refused his Oscar. He famously refused it, and in fact, he sent Sachin little feather to highlight the treatment of Native Americans in America. In fact, in 2003, filmmaker Michael Moore also used his acceptance speech to condemn the Iraq war. In fact, during his acceptance speech, he said that it's important that we stop the war. Then you also had Leonardo DiCaprio. He turned his 2016 Best Actor speech into a warning about climate change. So he became an eco-warrior when he was accepting his award. And in 2017, you had the ceremony dominated by the Oscars So White debate. Essentially, all these actors had come out and spoken out about the discrimination, the racial discrimination which they allege within the Oscars as well, putting the spotlight on diversification as well as representation within Hollywood as well. So this is not the first time. This time at the Oscars, when you've had political themes stealing the spotlight, anti-war narratives are what really stole the spotlights at the 98th Oscars this year. Let me go across to our panelists who are joining us today. We have Sierra Claire, who's joining us, a foreign policy analyst, who's joining us live from Los Angeles. We also have Raymond E. Vickery, a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies and a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce here on our show. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. I'm going to come across first to you, Sierra Claire, because it's important for us to understand what's really happening in America. On one hand, it appears that globally, there are more takers for Hollywood's Board of Peace than Trump's Board of Peace.
Well, you brought up the kind of history of the Oscars, which is interesting. As you mentioned, I'm based in Los Angeles, and so, but what I can tell you is that the American, the average American really has turned away from these Hollywood activist types. At one time, it may have meant something and it may have been genuine, but to the average American, it feels very performative at this time, and it feels like they really take these stances on these 90-10 issues, meaning issues that are mostly very popular with average people, and yet you see the Hollywood elites kind of taking the opposing stance, just to be opposing, just to be against Trump. We don't know why they do those things, but it is interesting to see kind of the evolution, that it's not received as it once was.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that true, Raymond Vickery, that earlier they may have pulled it off, this time it's just a stunt? Because many are asking, what do they attain? What do they achieve by taking a stand like this at the red carpet?
Well, thanks very much for allowing me to comment on this. It seems to me that in order to wage peace, which should be the objective of the United States and indeed all great democracies, whether they be India, Western Europe, Japan, you need to have a strategy, you need to have partners, you need to have cooperation, and you need to have principles. Unfortunately, none of these are present in the present war against Iran. It seems to me that It's sort of a domination, my way or the highway approach. And it has created a great deal of chaos in the political atmosphere here in the United States. And I believe that what happened at the Oscars, of course, is to some extent reflective of that. We have moved from a Department of Defense to a Department of War. Unfortunately, we are going to have to have actual action at the midterm elections. And it appears that at this point, about 40% or so, the MAGA base is in favor of whatever it is that President Trump does. And President Trump likes to have an enemy, and the enemy is in this case will be the Hollywood elite, as you will, and so that average people are not affected. But I predict that you're going to see a great turnout on March 28th, No King's Day. And then I predict that there will be, unless the elections are fixed in some way, that we will have a sea change in regard to the midterms.
Oh, that's going to be a big prediction that you've made. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to have you back on the show, Raymond Vickery, and see what happens during the midterms. But Sierra Claire, Raymond Vickery just said, it's not my way or the highway. That's not governance. That's not governance in a democracy. Perhaps the Trump administration would do well, because this may just be reflective of the mood on the ground.
Well, it's interesting that it's not my way or the highway is actually the stance of these Hollywood elites. And you mentioned Billie Eilish earlier. She's a great example. She went on stage recently at another award ceremony and made a whole speech about land rights and justice and different things. And then it turns out that her own house was actually...
I'm running out of time, so Sierra Claire, sorry to interrupt you. But wasn't it President Trump who said that there should be no wars? That Americans should not be part of wars which are not theirs to be fought?
Absolutely. And I think President Trump...
Isn't he the one who says we must have a vote of peace?
Yes, I think President Trump still believes that.
Appreciate that people are asking for the end of war, right?
Well, I think President Trump recognizes that many of these people are taking a stand simply to be opposing to him rather than reflecting a real substantive view on things.
Okay, so that's interesting because none of them really have named President Trump. They seem to be saying end the war, but why is that a problem now in Trumpland? Well, we leave you, the viewers, to decide. Thank you so much, Sierra Claire, as well as Raymond Vickery, for joining us here on the show. With that, we wrap up. I'll see you again tomorrow, 6:30 p.m.
Ship looks like it has some cracks in it, some holes in it that came under pressure over the Iran war. Joining me at this time is Sierra Claire. She's the former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor. She's a self-described America First foreign policy expert, also a college professor. Sierra, good to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So what's going on with the relationship between the U.S. and UK? You've recently written an article at townhall.com, and you said that this is simply Iran is simply only the latest in the problem.
Well, that's exactly right, Rick. And that's what I wanted to emphasize in the article is we've heard it a lot in the news recently about, should we stop sharing intelligence with them? Is the relationship over? And so what I wanted people to kind of understand is that this is actually a long time building, especially with this Labor government. Starmer has not been good for the U.S. relationship. And the people, the actual British people, I think, are very concerned about losing a U.S. allyship. They may not be all fans of Trump, or they may not even be all fans of America, but the people are aware that their security and their economy depends greatly on having a good relationship with the U.S. And so seeing this relationship fracture during the Iran crisis is really starting to panic especially I would say the British citizens.
So that's interesting. The common person on Main Street in Britain seems to be more concerned about than the British leadership does.
Absolutely. Yeah. This leadership has been really irresponsible with British security. You know, you look at what happened with Diego Garcia is a great example. And we saw Trump kind of tweeting about that deal and talking about why it was bad. It's a Chinese client state of China that the British government is now going to be leasing this island, Diego Garcia, from. And so you can imagine there's all kinds of problems with that, given that's a key military base for both the US and the UK. And then what we're seeing happen now with Iran is, the UK. First, they said we can't use their bases, just as the naval armada was arrived off the coast of Iran. Before we even were in a conflict, they said we can't use their bases at all. Then they said they would only, after we started the conflict and did a lot of success without them, they said that we could only use their bases for defensive purposes. After that announcement happened, you saw actually Bahrain get hit, and UK citizens are there. Bahrain has a very strong security relationship as well with the UK, and the government has not changed their stance on it at all. Now several days after that happened, they are sending a warship, but they had several chances throughout the buildup of this conflict to protect UK citizens in the Gulf countries and to work with the U.S. as an ally and, really be brought in onto this mission so that their bases and their people wouldn't be surprised. And they actually refused to do that, and people did get hurt because of it.
And, Sierra, I initially thought UK made that statement to the U.S. You can't use these naval bases because they were trying to ratchet down any attack from Iran. But as I listen to you, it may be more of a philosophical thing by the British leadership. What's your take?
Well, I think there is a concern, and I was speaking to someone in the UK recently who described there's been 20 attacks already since this Iran conflict has broken out in London by Islamic terrorists and different groups and things targeting Iranian dissidents as well as the Jewish community there. So they do have a concern, just like we do, of terrorism in their homeland, and they have a higher concern than we do, arguably. But I agree with what you just said, is that this is a philosophical difference between the Labour government and Trump. They are all about just being anti-Trump. And we've seen that from our own left and our own media, where they take these horrible stances that are just 90-10 issues, and they just want to be against Trump. And unfortunately, that's what the UK Labour government's doing as well.
How do you think this plays out? As you've pointed out, we've seen UK leadership sort of backpedal a little bit, backpedal. As this war appears to be increasing in its success for U.S. and Israel, as it appears to be going in the right direction in terms of Iran faltering. We don't know if that's going to happen completely. What's your take on how the leadership will likely communicate with the Trump administration?
Well, as you said, I think we're seeing them backpedal. They've started to realize that this is, a threat to their citizens abroad, a threat to their other security relationships with those Gulf countries. And so they've talked now about sending some warships to the area. So I do, for the sake of everyone involved, I hope that the cooperation continues through this conflict, and the intelligence sharing and all of that special relationship that we've had going with them, continues for now, because that would just be the best way to keep everyone safe. And I think that you're seeing the PM Starmer is on board with that, just due to pressures from all of these different angles. But, going forward, Trump said we will never forget this. And so I do think that there are questions about this relationship going forward. And the British people have a referendum coming up, I believe. So they may be looking themselves for a change in government, and that may be a good time to reset the U.S. UK relationship. But we'll have to see how all that plays out. But I think with this current Labor government and Trump, it's going to be really hard to come back from.
Well, yeah, you're right. Trump did say he will not forget this. Sierra, it's an important topic with such a lifelong ally. When I say lifelong, I mean lifelong is the length of the life of the U.S. government, U.S. nation.
Yes.
It's amazing. Any final comments, Sierra?
I would just say, as I opened up with, I think the British people really do value this relationship. And that's something for us to keep in mind as Americans, as we're considering our participation in NATO, our deals with the UK, everything like that. It is worth salvaging. And it's just about being strategic in this moment and figuring out how to best navigate this really unfortunate government that they have for themselves over there right now.
The irony is that it sounds a lot like you could be talking about the Iranian government. Now, of course, there's no comparison, but it's the people in the streets that want us there and the government that doesn't want us there in Iran. And as you said, the leader in the UK does not share the values of the people in the streets.
Absolutely.
Sierra Claire, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Back with more after this.